My sister threw away all my insulin out of jealousy, even though she knew I'm diabetic and could die. I was 10 years old when my pancreas decided to stop working. Type 1 diabetes, they called it. Autoimmune. My body attacking itself. The endocrinologist explained it to my parents like I wasn't sitting right there on the examination table. Legs dangling, still trying to process why I'd been peeing every 20 minutes and drinking water like I'd crossed a desert. My sister was 15, sitting in the corner of that sterile office, scrolling through her phone with this expression I couldn't quite read. Boredom, maybe, or something else. Something that looked almost like calculation. The diagnosis changed everything overnight. Suddenly, our kitchen looked like a pharmacy. The refrigerator had a special drawer just for my insulin, and my mom learned to count carbohydrates like she was studying for a math degree. I had to prick my fingers 6 times a day minimum, give myself injections before every meal, and wear this medical alert bracelet that made me feel like I had a target painted on my back at school. My parents were terrified. I could see it in their eyes every time they looked at me, like I might shatter if they weren't careful enough. Those first few months were brutal. I was supposed to be starting 5th grade, hanging out with friends, worrying about normal kid things. Instead, I was learning to calculate insulin to carb ratios and recognize the signs of hypoglycemia before I passed out. I remember sitting in the nurse's office during lunch, testing my blood sugar while other kids played outside, thinking this was my life now. Forever. No cure, no break. Just constant vigilance until the day I died. My parents threw themselves into managing my condition with an intensity that was both comforting and suffocating. My mom quit her part-time job to be available for school emergencies. My dad started attending diabetes support groups and coming home with new gadgets and strategies. They meant well. They were scared. But in their fear, they stopped seeing me as a kid and started seeing me as a medical crisis that needed constant supervision. My sister started acting weird almost immediately, but I didn't notice it at first. I was too busy trying to figure out how to be a kid with this new reality strapped to me. She'd make these little comments about how much attention I was getting, how everything revolved around my blood sugar now. Must be nice to be the center of the universe, she'd say, smiling in that way that wasn't really a smile. My parents would tell her to be supportive, that this was hard for everyone, and she'd roll her eyes and disappear into her room. The first real incident happened about 3 months after my diagnosis. We were supposed to go on this family trip to visit my grandparents, a 6-hour drive. I went to pack my supplies the night before and couldn't find 2 of my insulin vials. I was young enough then to think maybe I'd misplaced them, that I'd been careless. My parents tore the house apart looking, finally called in a prescription to a pharmacy near my grandparents' place, and we left a day late. I found out years later, reading through her journal, that the police confiscated, that she'd thrown them away. Just tossed them in the outside trash like they were nothing, like they weren't literally keeping me alive. The trip itself was a nightmare. The replacement insulin wasn't exactly the same formulation, and my blood sugar went haywire. I spent 2 days in the ICU at a hospital 3 states away from home, my organs going into ketoacidosis while my parents aged about 10 years and 48 hours. My sister visited once, brought me a stuffed animal, cried on camera when my mom was recording a video update for relatives. Everyone said how sweet she was, how scared she must have been. When we got home, my parents sat us both down and explained that my sister was going through a difficult time adjusting to the changes, that she needed patience and understanding, that sometimes people acted out when they felt overlooked. I was told, essentially, to be nicer to her, to recognize that this was hard for her too. I was 10. I'd just spent 2 days with tubes in my arms wondering if I was going to die, and I was being asked to be more considerate of my sister's feelings. That's when I learned that my medical crisis would always come with a side of guilt about how it affected everyone else, especially her. Middle school was hell, but not for the reasons you'd expect. I could handle the diabetes mostly. I got my insulin pump at 11, which meant fewer injections and better control. I learned to manage my numbers, to calculate my ratios, to recognize when I was going low or high. I became the responsible one, the mature one, the good patient that all my doctors praised. My endocrinologist would tell my parents I was remarkably mature for my age and so compliant with treatment. What they didn't understand was that I didn't have a choice. Compliance wasn't virtue, it was survival. My sister, meanwhile, became the architect of my social destruction, and she was good at it. Terrifyingly good. It started with little things. She was in high school by then, but her friends had younger siblings in my grade. Suddenly there were rumors that I was faking my diabetes for attention, that I could eat whatever I wanted but pretended I couldn't to seem special, that my parents bought me anything I wanted because they felt sorry for me. None of it was true, obviously, but try explaining the complex reality of an autoimmune disease to 12-year-olds who've been fed a specific narrative. I had to start testing my blood sugar in the nurse's office instead of discreetly in class because kids were accusing me of just pricking my finger for show. The school nurse, bless her, tried to be supportive, but even she looked at me sometimes with this expression like she wasn't quite sure what to believe. I had to pull out my pump and prove it was connected to my body when someone claimed I was carrying around a fake medical device. Actually lift my shirt and show the insertion site in my stomach, the thin tube connected to the device, the slight irritation around where it punctured my skin. Humiliating doesn't begin to cover it. Once, during a school assembly, I felt my blood sugar dropping and tried to quietly eat some glucose tablets. That familiar shakiness, the cold sweat, the way the world starts to feel far away. I'd gotten good at handling lows discreetly, popping the chalky tablets in my mouth without drawing attention. But a girl behind me, someone whose older brother was friends with my sister, loudly announced that I was eating candy during assembly and got me sent to the principal's office. I tried to explain about the hypoglycemia, showed them my pump, my glucose meter reading 58. The principal apologized, but the damage was done. The whole school heard about it by lunch. The worst part was my sister's performance when I'd come home crying about these incidents. She'd hug me, tell me kids were cruel, say all the right things in front of our parents. Then later, in passing, she'd make these razor-sharp comments. Well, you do get a lot of special treatment. Can you blame them for being confused? Or maybe if you weren't so public about it all the time. I started hiding my diabetes as much as possible, stopped talking about it, stopped asking for accommodations I needed. I'd go low during gym class and push through until I could get to my locker rather than tell the teacher. I'd run high rather than interrupt class to go to the bathroom. My control got worse, my anxiety got better at pretending everything was fine, and my parents thought I was just being a normal teenager. My sister studied everything about diabetes during those years. I'd find my medical textbooks in her room sometimes, pages bookmarked. She joined online forums, not to support me, but to learn. She became weirdly obsessed with the medical details, asking me questions that felt off somehow. What does it feel like when you're really low? How do you know when your insulin is working? What would happen if you didn't have insulin for a day? I thought maybe she was trying to understand. To be a better sister. I was so incredibly naive. The accidents escalated. My pump alarm would be silenced overnight, disconnecting me from insulin for hours. I'd wake up feeling awful, sugar in the 300s, wondering why I didn't hear the alert. My supplies would go missing before school events. School trips, anywhere that mattered. I'd find my glucose meter wedged behind furniture or in weird places I'd never leave it. Once, my entire backup supply kit disappeared the day before a 3-day school trip. Just vanished. When I complained to my parents, their response was always the same. You need to be more organized. You're getting older. This is your responsibility. Are you sure you didn't misplace it yourself? My sister would be standing right there, nodding sympathetically, offering to help me look, playing the concerned older sister role perfectly. I started sleeping with my supplies under my pillow. Started keeping redundant backups in weird places only I knew about. Started checking and rechecking everything obsessively. I developed anxiety that my therapist said was probably related to my diabetes. Never mind that it was specifically anxiety about someone sabotaging my medical care, because that sounded paranoid. That sounded like I was making up drama. So I kept my mouth shut and built little fortresses around my survival. By the time I was 15 and she was 20, we barely spoke. We lived in the same house, ate dinners at the same table, and existed in completely separate realities. She'd moved back home after a semester of community college, claiming she needed to figure things out. My parents welcomed her with open arms. I welcomed her with locked doors and hidden insulin. Then she announced at dinner one random Tuesday that she'd been experiencing symptoms of hypoglycemia. The performance that followed was almost impressive in its audacity. She'd been planning this for a while, I could tell. She had printouts of blood sugar readings, carefully constructed logs, even photos of my glucose meter screen that she'd apparently taken when I wasn't looking. She explained to our parents with tears in her eyes that she'd been scared to say anything, that she knew how much they already worried about me, that she didn't want to be a burden, that she'd been suffering in silence for months, trying to handle it alone, but the symptoms were getting worse and she was scared. Our parents, predictably, went into crisis mode. Appointments were scheduled. Tests were ordered. Specialists were consulted. And my sister gave the performance of her life at every single one. I went with them to a few appointments at first, supposedly for support. Really, I was watching her work. She'd researched everything. Knew just enough medical terminology to sound credible, but not so much that she seemed rehearsed. She'd cry at the right moments, show confusion at the right questions, express frustration at her mysterious condition in ways that made doctors want to solve the puzzle. The thing is, she wasn't perfect at it. Not at first. She'd get details wrong. She'd describe symptoms that didn't quite match. She'd use medical terminology incorrectly in ways that made the doctors pause and exchange glances. Once, she said she felt hypoglycemic when her sugar was rising too fast, which doesn't even make sense. Another time, she described symptoms of high blood sugar but said they happened during a low. But she was close enough to believable, and everyone wanted to believe her, especially our parents who saw this as some kind of horrible cosmic joke. One daughter with diabetes, now maybe two. The doctors were patient with her inconsistencies. They chalked it up to patient confusion, to the complexity of metabolic disorders, to the stress of dealing with medical issues. They ordered more tests, ran more panels, brought in more specialists. Each appointment validated her further, even when they found nothing. I watched this unfold with a sick feeling in my stomach. I knew. Of course I knew. I'd lived with her sabotage for years. I knew how she studied my condition. I knew about her obsession with medical attention. But I also knew that if I said anything, I'd be the jealous one. The sister who couldn't share the spotlight, the one making everything about herself. So I said nothing and watched her get exactly what she'd always wanted. Our parents' undivided attention and concern. Her episodes always happened in public. Grocery stores, restaurants. The one time she had a severe hypoglycemic crisis at my birthday dinner, I actually laughed. Couldn't help it. The timing was so perfectly calculated, so obviously designed to redirect all focus to her. My parents were furious with me for being insensitive. My sister was taken to the emergency room. My birthday cake sat half-eaten on the table. She'd have her episodes, the paramedics would come, her blood sugar would test normal, and the doctors would talk about rare conditions and atypical presentations. Thousands of dollars in tests, appointments with specialists 3 states away. My parents' insurance started sending letters about coverage limits. And through it all, my sister played the brave patient, the confused victim of a mysterious condition, the daughter who just wanted answers. She demanded a separate refrigerator for her supplies, claimed there was some risk of cross-contamination with my insulin. Our parents bought one without question and put it in her room. She'd set alarms for the middle of the night and have emergencies that woke the whole house. Meanwhile, I'd be in my room next door, managing an actual low blood sugar by myself, listening to the chaos of my sister's performance through the walls. The worst part was watching her convince people who should have known better. A few doctors started to believe her story, or at least couldn't completely rule it out. The attention they gave to her medical mystery validated the entire performance. She collected their business cards like trophies. She'd mention them casually in conversation. Well, as Dr. So-and-so from the specialty clinic said, she was building a case for herself using their confusion as evidence. I started spending more time out of the house. I got a job at 16, saved money, made plans for college that would take me far away. 2 more years, I told myself. Just 2 more years, and I could leave this toxic household and never look back. My sister must have sensed my detachment. Her performances ramped up. She started recording videos of me during my actual hypoglycemic episodes without my knowledge. I found the footage later on her computer. Hours of me, disoriented and shaky, struggling through low blood sugars while she filmed from doorways. She'd studied those videos like research material, practicing my exact mannerisms in her mirror. I know because I caught her once, watched her simulate confusion and slurred speech while staring at her own reflection. When I confronted her, she said she was trying to understand what I go through. Said it would help doctors understand her condition better if she could explain it using real examples. The gaslighting was so smooth I almost questioned my own perception of reality. She joined online diabetes forums using fake names. I discovered this when someone sent me a screenshot asking if I knew who was spreading dangerously incorrect information in a support group. The username was different, but the writing style and the details she shared were unmistakable. She was teaching people wrong information about insulin dosing, about symptom management, about emergency protocols. When members with actual medical knowledge corrected her, she'd argue and double down. She wanted to be seen as an expert. She wanted validation. She wanted to matter. The night before Thanksgiving, when I was 17 and she was 22, I had a serious low blood sugar around 2 in the morning. I woke up confused, drenched in sweat, my pump screaming alerts. I managed to stumble to the kitchen, get juice, sit on the floor until my head cleared. My sister found me there, asked if I was okay. I said I was fine. She helped me back to bed. I fell asleep grateful she'd been kind for once. I was so stupid. Thanksgiving dinner was huge that year. My mom's whole side of the family came. Aunts, uncles, cousins I barely knew from 3 different states. The house was packed with people and food and chaos. My sister had been weird all day, jumpy and distracted. I'd caught her checking her phone constantly, whispering into it in the bathroom. At the time, I thought maybe she was texting a boyfriend or something. Looking back, I think she was reviewing her performance notes. My sister, predictably, had an episode right as we were sitting down to eat. The whole production. Hand to forehead, wobbly voice. Dramatic near collapse into a dining room chair. Our aunt, who's a nurse, rushed over. My dad started looking for sugar. My mom's eyes filled with tears. "Not again," she kept saying. "Please, not again." My cousin from out of state, who'd arrived that morning and gone straight to the bathroom upstairs, made a comment. "Weird that you keep so much candy in your room if you have blood sugar problems. Like mountains of it." The room got quiet. My sister stammered something about needing emergency supplies, about how you had to have quick sugar available for lows, her voice pitching higher. "It's medical supplies. For emergencies, you wouldn't understand." But my cousin, bless her nosy heart, kept going. "No, like piles of it. Chocolate, gummy bears, sour candy, regular candy bars. I thought maybe you were hiding a secret stash from kids or something. Seemed like a lot for someone who's supposed to be super careful about sugar. Plus you have, like, no actual diabetes supplies, no test strips, no meter, no insulin, just candy." My aunt, the nurse, had already grabbed my sister's finger to test her blood sugar with my meter. My sister tried to pull away, saying she was too shaky, it wouldn't be accurate right now, but my aunt held firm. She looked at the reading, looked at my sister, looked at the reading again. The room held its collective breath. 95, she said slowly. "Your blood sugar is 95. That's perfect. That's dead center normal. If you were having a hypoglycemic episode right now, this number would be under 60. You're not having a low. You're not even close to having a low." My sister tried to say the meter was wrong, that she could feel her symptoms, that numbers don't tell the whole story. But you could see it happening in real time, the realization spreading across faces around the table, the pieces clicking into place. All those episodes, all those emergencies, all that attention and concern and medical bills. My uncle said someone should check her room. My sister said absolutely not, that was a violation of privacy. My dad was already heading up the stairs. They found the journal within 5 minutes. She'd hidden it in her closet, tucked into a box of old school papers. 14 months of detailed entries. Every fake symptom. Every manufactured crisis. Page after page of bitter resentment toward me, toward our parents, toward the universe that gave me diabetes and gave her nothing. She'd written about the satisfaction of making everyone worry, about the validation of having doctors take her seriously, about finally being seen. She'd also written, in casual detail, about every act of sabotage over the years, the insulin she'd destroyed, the supplies she'd hidden, the rumors she'd started, the online misinformation she'd spread. 7 years of systematic destruction of her sister's medical care and social life, documented like laboratory notes. When they brought the journal downstairs, my sister didn't even try to deny it. She exploded instead, screamed at my parents about how they'd never loved her, how everything had always been about me and my diabetes and my special needs, how she'd been invisible for 7 years. How dare they prioritize a medical condition over their real daughter? Her words, not mine. Real daughter. I sat there eating mashed potatoes while my sister had her meltdown. I felt weirdly calm. Vindicated, maybe. Or just too exhausted to feel much of anything. My parents gave her 30 days to move out. She had until Christmas to find somewhere else to live. It was the first actual consequence she'd faced in over a decade of increasingly destructive behavior. And I could see in her eyes that it wasn't the guilt or the shame or the exposure that broke her. It was that she was losing her audience. The next morning, Friday after Thanksgiving, I woke up to my pump alarm screaming that my insulin reservoir was empty. The harsh beeping dragged me out of sleep at 7 in the morning, and my first thought was confusion. That couldn't be right. I'd loaded a fresh cartridge before bed. I always did. 3 days' worth of insulin, carefully measured and loaded. I was obsessive about it after years of sabotage had taught me to triple-check everything. No way it was gone. But the reservoir in my pump showed 0 units remaining. I felt wrong immediately. That specific kind of wrong that means your blood sugar is climbing and you need insulin now. Fuzzy head. Dry mouth. The beginning of that desperate thirst. I ran to the kitchen where we kept the backup supplies in the refrigerator. The drawer was empty. Completely empty. Every vial of insulin, gone. For a second, I just stood there staring at the empty space, my brain refusing to process what I was seeing. My sister was standing at the sink. She had one of my insulin vials in her hand, holding it up to the light like she was examining a specimen. As I watched, frozen in the doorway, she dumped it down the drain. The thick, clear liquid caught the morning sunlight as it splashed into the basin. Then she reached for another one from a row of vials lined up on the counter. All my insulin. Every single vial. Lined up like soldiers waiting for execution. "What are you doing?" My voice came out weird, high-pitched, childlike. "That's my insulin. I need that right now." She looked at me with this expression I'd never seen before. Absolutely calm, almost serene. Her face had this peaceful quality that was somehow more terrifying than anger would have been. "You're going to tell them the truth," she said conversationally, like she was asking me to pass the salt. "You're going to tell everyone that we planned this together, that you taught me how to fake everything, that we were both pretending to share the attention, that this was always a game we played together." I actually laughed. Couldn't help it. The audacity of it. The absolute insanity. "Are you insane? Give me my insulin. Give it to me right now." She dumped another vial. Watched it go down the drain with that same peaceful expression. "Tell them," she repeated. "Call everyone back. Tell them it was both of us. Tell them you were in on it. Make this make sense for me." I tried to push past her to grab the remaining vials. She blocked me, and suddenly there was a kitchen knife in her hand. One of the big ones, the chef's knife my dad used for cutting meat. She held it casually, like it was a television remote, but the blade was between me and my insulin. "I will destroy all of it," she said. "Every single one. Try me. You think I won't?" After everything? My phone was in my room. The landline was right there on the kitchen wall. I moved toward it. She ripped the cord out of the socket with her free hand, the plastic connector sparking as it tore from the wall. "Oops," she said. Not sorry at all. "My phone is in my car," she continued conversationally, dangling the car keys like a taunt. "And Mom and Dad took their car to pick up last-minute groceries. They'll be gone for at least an hour. Plenty of time for you to come to your senses and do the right thing." We stood there in a standoff. Me in my pajamas starting to feel the fuzzy edges of high blood sugar creeping in, her with my insulin hostage and completely unhinged eyes. "You're going to kill me," I said. Stated it as a fact, not a question. "You're being dramatic," she said. But she dumped another vial anyway. I tried the front door. Locked, and she'd taken that key too. I tried the back door. Same thing. The windows in our house were old and painted shut. I'd need tools to open them, and those were in the garage, which accessed through the kitchen where she was standing guard. She followed me as I moved through the house, staying between me and any possible exit, holding the knife casually like it was a television remote. "Just tell them," she kept saying. "Just make this story make sense for me. Make them understand it wasn't all my fault." My thoughts were getting harder to organize. That's the thing about high blood sugar that people don't understand. It's not instant like low blood sugar, but it's insidious. Your brain starts working slower. Your judgment gets fuzzy. You feel sick and tired and desperate. I'd tested high enough times to recognize the signs in myself, even in crisis. I made it to the living room window. Saw our neighbor, Mrs. Chen, walking her dog across the street. I pounded on the glass. My sister grabbed my arm, trying to pull me back. I managed to mouth help and call 911 before she yanked me away from the window. I don't know if Mrs. Chen saw me. I don't know if she understood. In the kitchen, my sister was crying now, still dumping vials, her hands shaking. This is your fault, she sobbed. All of this is your fault. You got sick and ruined everything. I felt my legs give out, sat down hard on the kitchen floor. My vision was getting blurry at the edges. I'm going into ketoacidosis, I said. My voice sounded far away. You know what that means. You studied it. You know this will kill me. She stopped, looked at the last 2 vials in her hand, looked at me on the floor, and I saw the exact moment she realized what she'd actually done. The color drained from her face. Oh God, she whispered. Oh God, oh God. She knelt next to me, trying to open one of the vials she hadn't destroyed yet. But she didn't know how to administer insulin. She'd studied the symptoms, the performance, but not the actual treatment. Her hands were shaking so badly she dropped the vial. It rolled under the refrigerator. That's when the paramedics arrived. Mrs. Chen had called 911. Bless that woman. They broke down the front door and found us in the kitchen, me barely conscious on the floor, my sister having a complete breakdown, insulin vials smashed everywhere. I woke up 3 days later in the ICU. Again, ketoacidosis. Again. But this time was different. My kidneys had taken a hit. Temporary damage, they said. Possibly permanent. They wouldn't know for weeks. The police were waiting to talk to me when I was coherent enough. They'd found the journal. They'd found the security camera footage from Mrs. Chen's porch that showed my sister blocking the door with a knife. They'd pieced together 13 years of medical abuse and attempted homicide. My parents looked like they'd aged 20 years in 3 days. They kept apologizing. Over and over. We didn't see it. We should have seen it. We're so sorry. What do you even say to that? That they'd prioritize their older daughter's feelings over my literal survival for my entire adolescence? That their desperate desire for family harmony had enabled someone who wanted me dead? I said nothing, just stared at the ceiling and counted the tiles. My sister was arrested at the hospital. I heard her in the hallway before they took her to the station, screaming that she'd just wanted me to understand. That she'd only wanted me to feel what it was like to be invisible. That she never meant for it to go this far. The police report said she was still crying about feeling ignored when they booked her. The prosecutor called it attempted murder with depraved indifference, knowingly creating circumstances likely to cause death without actually intending to kill. Also destroying vital medication. Also unlawful imprisonment. The charges were read to me while I was still connected to machines monitoring my kidney function. My sister cried through her arraignment. I watched from a wheelchair via video link because I wasn't stable enough to leave the hospital. 9 days after the incident, I was transferred to a regular room. Still weak, still monitored, but alive. My parents brought me things from home. My laptop, some books, clean clothes. They moved like ghosts, these people who were supposed to protect me. My dad couldn't look me in the eye. My mom kept touching my hand like she was checking to make sure I was real. The hospital social worker came by to discuss safety planning for discharge. Such clinical language for, your sister tried to kill you, and we need to make sure she can't finish the job. They helped my parents install biometric safes for all my insulin and supplies. Medical-grade locks that only opened with my fingerprint. Alarm systems for my room. Emergency kits hidden in 3 different locations around the house. They gave me pamphlets about trauma therapy and support groups for victims of family violence. Victims of family violence. That's what I was now. Not just the kid with diabetes, the victim. I spent 4 weeks total in the hospital. Physical therapy to regain strength. Nephrology appointments to monitor my kidney function. Endocrinology trying to get my diabetes control back on track after the trauma had sent everything haywire. Psychiatry visits where I sat in silence because I didn't have words for what had happened. How do you explain that your sister's jealousy almost killed you? That your parents' denial enabled it? That you'd spent years knowing something was wrong but being too gaslit to trust your own perception? Going home was surreal. The house looked the same but felt completely different. My parents had removed everything that belonged to my sister. Her room was empty, stripped down to bare walls like she'd never existed. They'd installed cameras in the kitchen, the hallways, anywhere I might be vulnerable. Our house had become a fortress designed to protect me from the family member who should have been my protector. I couldn't look at the kitchen sink. Every time I went in there for water or food, I'd see her standing there, dumping vial after vial while my life literally went down the drain. I started having panic attacks when I needed to refill my insulin pump. The simple act of loading a fresh cartridge would trigger full-body flashbacks. I'd see her face, calm and serene, holding that knife. Smell the insulin as it splashed into the sink. Feel my legs giving out. My therapist said it was post-traumatic stress. No kidding. The restraining order was permanent. My sister wasn't allowed within 500 feet of me, our house, my school, or anywhere I was known to frequent. She was living with my aunt across the state while awaiting trial. My aunt, to her credit, had called me to apologize for doubting me all those years, said she should have paid attention to the red flags, should have questioned the inconsistencies. I told her everyone should have, but most people don't want to believe that someone they love is capable of systematic cruelty. School was impossible. I'd missed a month and everyone knew why. The story had made local news. Sister accused of destroying diabetic siblings' insulin in attempted murder. My phone blew up with messages from people I barely knew. Some supportive, some morbidly curious, some accusing me of being dramatic. She was just having a mental health crisis. You're ruining her life over one mistake. Family should forgive family. I blocked 200 people in 1 week. The trial took 6 months to reach the courtroom. 6 months of depositions and evidence review and lawyers telling me I'd need to testify. 6 months of my sister's defense team trying to paint her as the real victim, as someone driven to a moment of temporary insanity by years of being overshadowed. They brought in psychologists who talked about sibling rivalry and adjustment disorders. They tried to argue that she hadn't actually intended to kill me, that she just wanted attention. The prosecutor brought in my medical records, 13 years of them, highlighted every mysterious incident, every unexplained supply shortage, every sabotaged moment that I'd thought was my own carelessness. Built a timeline of escalating abuse that showed clear premeditation and pattern. Brought in the journal entries where she detailed her satisfaction at my suffering. Read them aloud in court while I sat in the witness stand, and my sister sobbed at the defense table. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts, except attempted murder. They convicted her of reckless endangerment instead, plus assault, plus destruction of medical property. The judge sentenced her to 8 years in prison with possibility of parole after 5. 8 years. For 13 years of torture and 1 attempt on my life. My sister cried as they led her away. Looked back at me with these wounded eyes like I'd somehow betrayed her by surviving and telling the truth. Like I was the villain in her story. Maybe I was. In the story she'd constructed in her head, where she was the overlooked child and I was the golden patient, maybe my existence was villainy enough. That was 3 years ago. I'm 20 now. In college across the country, studying to be a social worker because I know what it looks like when a family system fails a child. Both children in my case. Because my sister was failed too, in her own way. Our parents should have gotten her therapy when the jealousy started. Should have set boundaries. Should have seen that normal sibling rivalry crossed into pathological territory around year 2. Should have protected us both instead of pretending everything was fine until it almost killed me. My diabetes is under control again, mostly. The kidney damage was temporary, thank God. But I still have panic attacks when I refill my pump. Still check my supplies obsessively. Still can't bring myself to store insulin in a kitchen. I keep it in a safe in my dorm room, fingerprint locked, with 2 backup locations that only my doctor and my roommate know about. I don't talk to my parents much. A phone call every few weeks. Superficial conversation about classes and weather. They're in therapy, working through their guilt. They've apologized so many times the words have lost meaning. I know they're sorry. I know they love me. I also know that their apologies don't undo 13 years of enabling abuse. Don't erase the times they told me to be more understanding. Don't bring back the childhood I spent in survival mode. My sister writes me letters from prison. They arrive at my parents' house. My mom scans and emails them to me. I don't open them. I know from my mom's summaries that they're full of apologies and explanations and requests for forgiveness. She's had a lot of therapy in prison, apparently, has been diagnosed with cluster B personality disorder traits, and is working through childhood trauma and sibling dynamics and all the psychological buzzwords that are supposed to explain why she tried to kill me. Maybe someday I'll read those letters. Maybe someday I'll care about her healing journey. Right now, I'm focused on my own. I've learned that forgiveness isn't mandatory, that you can acknowledge someone's pain while still holding them accountable for their actions. That understanding why someone hurt you doesn't mean you have to let them back into your life. These are lessons I'm trying to learn anyway. Some days are better than others. My roommate is teaching me to cook. Real cooking, not just microwave meals and takeout. I'm learning to spend time in kitchens without having flashbacks. Learning that a sink is just a sink, that food preparation can be joyful instead of traumatic. It's slow progress. Last week, I managed to wash dishes without feeling like I was going to throw up. Small victories. I'm also learning to be a person with diabetes instead of a person defined by diabetes. I wear my pump openly now, answer questions when people ask instead of hiding. I volunteer with a diabetes youth program, talking to newly diagnosed kids and their families. I tell them about the medical stuff, sure, but I also tell them about setting boundaries, about recognizing when support becomes enabling, about trusting their instincts when something feels wrong. I don't tell them about my sister. That story is too dark for kids who just need hope. But I think about her sometimes. Wonder if she thinks about those 13 years. If she can see now what I saw then. That she was loved, just not in the way she wanted. That attention and love aren't the same thing. That destroying someone else doesn't elevate you. That the problem was never my diabetes. The problem was that she made my medical condition into her identity crisis and decided I owed her something for existing. My therapist says I'm making remarkable progress. That most people who've survived what I survived struggle for decades with trust and safety. I told her that's because most people don't spend their formative years training for survival. I had 13 years of practice before the big finale. I knew how to hide supplies, watch for sabotage, sleep lightly, trust no one. My sister thought she was destroying me all those years, but she was actually training me to survive her. There's irony in that, I think. She spent 13 years trying to make me invisible and ended up making me sharp enough to cut through her lies. Strong enough to survive her final betrayal. Aware enough to recognize abuse when everyone else called it love. She gave me that, even though she didn't mean to. She made me someone who refuses to be erased, someone who knows their worth isn't determined by another person's jealousy. Someone who survived despite everything she did to prevent it. I'm 20 years old. I have diabetes, I have PTSD, I have a sister in prison who tried to kill me, and I have a life that I'm building carefully, deliberately, with better boundaries and clearer vision than most people my age. I'm not grateful for what happened. I'm not thankful for the trauma. But I'm here. I'm alive. I'm learning to trust again, slowly. Learning to let people in without wondering if they'll use my vulnerabilities to destroy me. My sister gets out in 2 more years if she makes parole. I'll be 22. Graduated, probably. Started my career. Living somewhere she doesn't know. The restraining order will stay in effect, but I'm making plans anyway. Different state. Unlisted address, new phone number, just in case. Because I learned the most important lesson early. Sometimes the person who's supposed to love you the most is the one you need the most protection from. And that's okay. Survival isn't pretty. Boundaries aren't cruel. Cutting off toxic family isn't betrayal. It's just refusing to die for someone else's story. And after everything, I think I've earned that right. So that's where I am now. 20 years old, alive against considerable odds. Learning to be happy in spite of everything. My sister wanted me invisible. Instead, I'm here, taking up space, refusing to apologize for existing. Turns out survival is the best revenge. Who knew?